All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Myra McShane, and I will be serving as your virtual room monitor today. I welcome you to the 11:15 session titled Utilizing GIS to Connect Hoosiers to Local Food and Meal Distributions. This presentation will provide an overview of the project, including map details, key lessons learned, what's next, and recommendations for state agencies to utilize similar maps for projects. This session will be held by the MAPS project team, which includes individuals from Indiana Family and Social Services Administration, as well as the Geographic Information Office. Our speakers for this session are Megan Lish and Irv Goldblatt. Megan serves as the Special Projects Director for FSSA, where she supports the agency's Office of Healthy Opportunities and WISE Indiana State Academic Partnerships. Megan is a recent graduate of the IU Richard Fairbanks School of Public Health, where she received her MPH in Health Policy and Management. Irv Goldblatt is a longtime GIS user in state government. Irv is a technology manager in IoT, more specifically in the GIO office. His duties include teaching the desktop GIS classes and managing software and server environments. Irv will be retiring December 30th. Congratulations, Irv. A few reminders. This session is being recorded, and please use the chat function to comment or ask questions. At this time, I will hand off the virtual mic to Megan and Irv.
Good morning. Thanks so much, Myra, for the great introductions. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you all as part of GIS Day. This is my first time attending this event, so I'm really excited for the opportunity to be with Irv and share a little bit about our work. So let's go ahead and dive in, just providing an overview of how we'd like to spend our time this morning. We really want to help set the stage and share the who, what, when, where, and why behind this project that we've titled the Food Assistance Availability Map. And then we'll have a chance for Irv to share some of the technical components and how we utilized Esri, our GIS Online, and the host of tools to bring this project to life. We'll also have a chance to demo the tools so you can see it from an interactive standpoint. And then finally, we'll kind of wrap up our time and sharing how we've improved some of our workflows to really utilize the tool to the best of its ability. And then also share, to Myra's point, some of the lessons that we've learned, and then we'd love to answer some of your questions at the end. And if at any point during the presentation there's issues with audio or the slides, feel free to bring that to Myra's attention and we'll get that situated as we proceed. And then just some general context for myself. I am a GIS newbie, as I like to call it. I did not know what GIS was prior to working on this project with Irv and the GIO team. So that kind of hopefully provides some context as we proceed through this morning as well. So just to help set the stage for why we came to the Geographic Information Office for this work and this project, it returns us all the way back to March 2020, which was the beginning of the pandemic after the World Health Organization considered COVID-19 and that virus a global pandemic. And we saw the increase in infections in our communities and across our state and the nation. And we think about some of those large events that followed those initial announcements and news. We think about school closures where students were transitioning to virtual learning. We also had businesses who were changing their operations, and as a result, their employees were either being furloughed, laid off, or experiencing reduced hours, which was definitely impacting the amount of income that they were bringing in for themselves to provide for their families or just themselves. Then we also noticed changes in the supply chain. The best example that comes to mind is going to the grocery store and there being no toilet paper or very limited quantities of masks, hand sanitizer, and even food in this case, as folks were preparing for that unknown time, as we were, again, very unsure at the beginning of the pandemic how things were going to play out in the coming weeks and months. And these are a few of those indirect effects of the pandemic that weren't necessarily clinical in nature, but did impact our communities, our neighbors, and Hoosiers generally speaking in this way. And these are kind of some of the major inputs to this phenomena of food insecurity. And so some of you may or may not be aware of this term, but it's defined by Feeding America as a lack of consistent access to enough food to live an active, healthy life. And one's food insecurity can fluctuate. So there may be one day or one week where someone is assured that there will be food on the table, food in the fridge and in the pantry. And there may be other weeks that were somewhat influenced by the pandemic that caused changes in income, where someone may have had to make the decision between food and rent, or food and their utilities, or food and an unexpected expense that may have not been budgeted or anticipated for. And when we think about food insecurity, it's usually represented by a percentage or a rate that is just determined based on various inputs and data points. And at the beginning of the pandemic, prior to actually, the state was at about a 13.2% food insecurity rate, which equates to about 880,000 Hoosiers and children, including adults and children who were looking to other sources for their food needs. And then at the height of the pandemic, we saw an increase in that rate to about 14.5%, which is close to 1 million Hoosiers that were experiencing this food security. So that rate continues to fluctuate as things, normalize as we've seen waves in the pandemic, but it's definitely been impacted by the 3 items that I've shared here. So when we see this food insecurity, this was a significant increase in demand for food resources. And these are some photos that describe that need very clearly. So we see up in the top row, we've got lines of cars who are awaiting food boxes that have been prepared, and they just get put in the trunks so folks can proceed through that line rather quickly. Then we also see large scale distribution events and even the mobilization of our state's National Guard to help fill some of those workforce gaps that we experienced in this network. And these are just a few examples of some of the large scale initiatives that were put into place to really meet this demand and meet the increase in food insecurity that we were seeing throughout the state. And these are just a few photos that are representative of our state's charitable food distribution network, which is, for lack of a better word, a matrix of multiple inputs that ultimately provide food and meals to seniors, adults, students, families, anyone in need. And so we've had these general inputs of the state and federal programs. We also have our state's food bank network, their partner agencies that are the food pantries and community kitchens that are mobilizing at that local level. Then we also had, continue to have local and faith-based organizations that aren't necessarily involved independently of food bank that are also filling in those meal gaps and that food gap. And so this is a very simplified high-level overview of how this network has come together in the pandemic to provide food and meals to fill that gap. Then also below, we have several partners at the federal, state, and local levels who have been tremendously helpful in their expertise in their scope of work and in their target populations of providing food and meals as well. And so this is representative of this greater network that has been, in many cases, behind the scenes, working tirelessly to ensure that food insecurity is being tackled head on. And so when we think about the larger business need that predicated this project, we think about, this increase in food insecurity, folks experiencing just very large changes and adjustments in their life. And many of these, individuals are looking to the food distribution network for the first time to get food, whether that be a prepared food box or a meal, or even utilizing other resources within that organization. There's sometimes a stigma that comes with needing to utilize those resources, especially if they're utilizing them for the first time. And so there was a need identified of these folks are coming to the network, many for the first time, wanting to get connected. How can they find their local food bank? How can they find their local, school meal site? And so with that, we wanted to create a one-stop shop for Hoosiers to locate free food options, as one for the entire state did not exist previously. And so that was definitely our number one goal in the map of how we can gather data and present it in an approachable and functional form for our target audience. We really took the bull by the horns and created a very simple, easy to use platform, which you'll see here in a little bit with the demo of the tool, in which we were able to display just the right data points in order to meet that need, so folks weren't having to toggle with any widgets or additional tools. And as great as Esri is in creating very, high tech, super fancy platforms, especially with the newness of the platform to our agency and our work in the pandemic response, and also the urgency that we had to put out this resource, we really wanted to give folks a very approachable platform. And so now transitioning from some of that context and telling the story of why this project and this application was needed, and now moving into the process of how we were able to build and deploy the map. So we followed these 3 steps of compiling and cleaning the source data, which was arguably the most important step, since we wanted to present that in a way that was simple, streamlined, and effective and efficient. Then we also utilized the Charitable Food Distribution Network as a stakeholder group in keeping us informed of what data they like to see, how they'd like it displayed, in which Irv worked his magic to build that out using GIS. And then we also were able to host it on our website, where it continues to live today. And this whole process was completed within 1 week's time, which is considerable with the newness of the pandemic at the time and usually how government works. So we were really able to put this process into place rather quickly. So when we think about the source data, we did receive files and exports through Excel from many different sources. We did, many being state agencies, the Department of Health and the Department of Education. Then we also got data from the food banks themselves on their partner agencies and mobile sites, so that we could combine all of that together into that base layer, which you'll see here in the demo that's upcoming. And so the important processes that we followed here was just standardizing the data so that it fit within the points that were important and relevant to the target audience, and making sure everything was organized, which that definitely takes time. And also using various geocoders to ensure that the data or the sites themselves were matching to the appropriate geographic location. We did have a couple of hiccups where things would end up in different states and sometimes even different continents. So always double checking our work there. and then importing that into GIS to kind of build that base map. So I want to hand it over to Irv for him to share a little bit about his process after that data initially was received, how he went about building the application.
Okay, and this will be a talking head presentation, in part because there's been a few generations of ArcGIS Online upgrades since we built the initial application. And if you're familiar with software as a service, they do updates to, Esri does updates not only to ArcGIS Online, but also to their app builder apps. And this is what we used. We use the app builder app, the near app, and it has changed significantly since the version that I used to build it. But let me start off by saying I am not a developer. And other than a couple areas where I got some suggestions from Matt Robinson from Esri, using the built-in app builder, application builder within ArcGIS Online doesn't take a developer. So if you haven't had a chance to work with that, if you are at Esri shop and you have ArcGIS Online or even ArcGIS Enterprise Portal, you have some pretty powerful tools out there that and application builders that don't really take a lot to build something that is very successful. So to begin with, I have to give Megan a huge amount of credit. I mean, she walked into this project as she didn't say this. She was an intern at the time. So she literally just started what, 2 days before or after everybody was locked down. And so she interned from home the entire time and working with technology she's never probably even heard of before that early March day in 2020. This also was an opportunity for me. This project started after the government center was closed down, and I've been working here in my basement ever since. And I made a conscious, since this was going to be a web-based application, that's when I did my transition from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro, and really haven't looked back since then. So a lot of the work I did was working with ArcGIS Pro to build the map. So, we FSSA, Rachel and Megan on the staff there at FSSA, along with the collaborators from the food or pantry organizations, came up. They had a spreadsheet that was created that gave named addresses, email addresses, and hours and days of operation of the various food banks around the state. Those were all in a spreadsheet. So Megan, basically one of her functions was she standardized all that stuff and put it into a single format. I'm not sure exactly how much work that was, but I imagine, knowing the way people do their spreadsheets, it was a lot of work. So she gave me a fairly clean spreadsheet. And when we first started the process, we literally on a daily basis would update she'll have an update to the spreadsheet, and we get an update to the spreadsheet from the Department of Education. And I would then geocode and replace the existing data with the new data sets each time. We made some changes later on, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And then, so I would create the map, do the geocode. Initially, we did geocoding working with ArcGIS Pro. There were some technical issues because the way our geocoder was working, many of our addresses were being address matched multiple times. And so it was causing some issues with cleaning up the data. I mean, it was literally taking 2 to 3 hours to clean the geocoding services. Megan took the addresses and actually went through Google address matching and basically cleaned up the data sets by adding the XY coordinates, the latitudes and longitudes. And so after about 3 or 4 weeks into the project, we switched over to that, and that reduced the time for processing in the back end considerably. So we create the map, we then publish it as a service out ArcGIS Online, and then I use the ArcGIS online near command or near app to create the application that we'll be showing here in a minute. And essentially what that application is you type in an address where you click on the map location, and it just goes out and basically does a search out to a defined distance of, and you can actually slider bar or you can define a distance up to a few 5 miles or whatnot. And then it basically creates a list of the facilities that are within that search parameter. We did not have a set to actually give street directions to people on those. We just basically said, draw a circle around my address, what's nearby, what are their hours. And so we set it up that when it brings up the information, there was some fields that were in the spreadsheet that the providers did not want us to share. Specifically email addresses, because a lot of these folks are volunteers, and so the email address for the food pantry or kitchen is not really the kitchen or pantry's email address, it was that individual's. So we just gave that information that is necessary so that people could have a contact, have an address, see where it was on the map. So we created the map, the app, we had it set up, had the folks that verify, hey, this looks good, customers, so that they could, they could see what their people said. And the app was built, specifically, it's a PC-based app, but it does work on a mobile device. But we found that when we embedded the app map into the FSSA website, the mobile app didn't work very well. So we added a link to open up in ArcGIS Online, so the mobile apps would be a little bit more mobile friendly for those applications. So that's basically the process we went through. And then as time went on, near the end, as we were getting close to one of the many peaks, the valleys of this endurance race we've been in for the last year and a half, we started looking at what can we do to improve the updating process. So what we ended up doing is we published out the data as a feature service into ArcGIS Online, and we created 2 apps. One app, a read-only app that the public would have access to get to the information. And then there was an editing app that now, instead of having to go through and update things en masse, Megan or other people at FSSA that have the rights within ArcGIS Online can open up the editing app and update hours of operations, add new locations, move a location, because occasionally some of these folks do move from one location to another, and be able to maintain that database and to maintain the map in a very consistent manner. And I know Megan will be talking in a few minutes a little bit more about some of the other things that we're hoping to see this technology and this app itself being integrated with some other services that FSSA provides.
Great, thanks for that overview. I really appreciate it. So moving into what Irv shared, we were able to launch this application. So I'd like to provide a quick demo of what that looks like today. Just a moment to reshare. Great, so this is on our Division of Family Resources website and is accompanied by just some general directions and toolkits, so folks that are visiting this resource for the first time can go through things step by step and be able to approach the resource as such. So here we have the app with the nearby locator and just displaying some of these different features. We can zoom into a certain area of the map and set the location. And then we do have the opportunity to toggle the radius for the search results so that it will populate within that distance. And once we select, for example, this mobile food bank at the Boone County Fairgrounds in Lebanon, Indiana, we're able to see the address, the population that's served, any criteria that's needed for folks to consider before visiting the site, information available through websites, and then finally the hours of operation, which are spread out by the day. Then if we reset things a little bit, we can also type in a location or a zip code. So I'm going to do 46204, which is right here in central Indianapolis, close to the government center where I'm at. And we have various open sites that are available here. And again, we can toggle the radius to account for different distances that are desired, and you can also click the specific site as well to view that location. So that's just a very quick overview of what that map looks like. So moving on to the reception and utilization, because again of the severity of the pandemic at the time and all the unknowns that came with sort of that initial first wave, we did put out a news release to notify the public, which holds a lot of our stakeholder groups and service populations, to inform them that this resource was live and available for consumption and utilization. We were also fortunate that a few local news outlets were able to pick up that news release and share with their networks as well, so we can continue to get the word out there. Then we also have an opportunity, because the service is hosted on ArcGIS Online, to track the utilization of the base layer through these reports. So we've seen throughout the past year or so of time, we've had just shy of 410,000 requests, unique requests for data in the base layer, which is great, given that it's located on our homepage and readily accessible to those who may need to utilize the map. So as Irv alluded to in his discussion on building the app, at first, at the onset of this project, we did a lot of manual work to update the map Monday through Friday, and it was taking a considerable amount of time. So as things kind of calmed down a little bit, we put our heads together to see how we could improve the workflow to make updates easier and more reliable and less prone to human error, given the amount of updates that were needed to be done on a daily basis. So we were able to get the app transitioned through this editor app, which you'll see through a screenshot here, so that we can select, add, modify locations with this smart editor tool. And as soon as you hit save, it will update the map in real time. And then as far as data sharing goes, which we do share data with one of our divisions, Indiana 211, it's very easy to pull a CSV export to determine what updates were made within a day or a week's time, so that they can be aware of any changes as well. So thinking about the future state, this map was launched in the end of March 2020, so it's been live now for quite some time, and we've been extremely fortunate that it's been of good use to us. And so as we move into this next phase of the pandemic response, we are taking opportunities now to memorialize our workflows and the project plan, because we really hope to utilize maps similar to this one in our agency in the future. And so we want to provide a good roadmap as other divisions and business units may see a need for GIS utilization within our agency. As I shared in the previous slide, we do have Indiana 211, which is a hub for resource community-based organization connections for Hoosiers that call the number 211. And some of you may be familiar with the vaccination call center and some of the other programs that they offer through that division. So now they're part of FSSA. We do have an increased capacity and staff who work directly in the food space. So we're working with them closely to see how they could potentially utilize this map in the future with some of their work that they're doing, so as to not duplicate effort and create any confusion with our constituents and our audiences. And so again, we also want to, see how we can adopt GIS further within our agency. And so we've been lucky to help inform some of the GIO strategy. We also have a great champion within our agency, Caleb, who's part of the Geographic Information Council board, who's been able to help me with some other ad hoc GIS work. And so there's definitely great opportunity that we have to capitalize on GIS and its tool in partnership with the GIO to see how we can really continue to utilize this tool within our agency, since we touch so many populations and we have various programs and services in which this tool may be helpful. So just wrapping up with some of our lessons learned, and I'll let Irv jump in here too, since he was vital to this project. As both of us are new in the developing world, and me specifically to the GIS world, it's definitely an approachable resource, and it's very fun to use, especially for those who want to have control over what they're looking for and searching for. And it's definitely fun being able to work on some projects and upload layers and maps. And again, it's very easy and intuitive to use too, so you don't have to put too much pressure on yourself to learn quickly, and it's easy to gain confidence. And as Irv had shared with ArcGIS Online, if you have, a login, it can make you a developer. They have lots of quick apps that you can build with data points that may be provided by the GIO services or with other data sets that you may bring into the map. We also got a chance to work really closely with the GIO, which was, again, an office I had not been very familiar with prior to this project. So they're definitely an asset and part of this greater GIS user community that we're now very thankful to be part of, and that we're stuck with and excited to continue partnering with in the future. So Irv, do you have anything to add there or thoughts?
The one thing I want to really, really stress is the third bullet item, collaboration. There was, that's probably one thing that we did have in this project, was very good discussions on what we were trying to get accomplished, what we needed to do to get it accomplished. And we had the people there who were able to just say, okay, let's just do it and let's get it done. Let's get it there. And getting the feedback back and forth, and the communication and the finding the data sources and getting all the players together and in a virtual room to discuss things. That was very, very key to not only the project success, but just being able to get it done in a time frame. Like you said, we essentially had it up and running in about a week, which is incredible in any situation. And on your fourth item, yes, the GIS community. I see Jim Sparks make a comment welcoming Megan to the community. It's been my experience in the last 20 plus years, I won't say how many plus, that we are a community, and it's always been a great community. And I'm glad it's still, it's matured, but still hasn't gotten crusty, and that's good. And when we have new blood like Megan coming in, I have a lot of hope for the future of being just as bright as it has been in the past 30 years or so. So, but that's it. That's all I wanted to say is collaboration was key to the success of the project, and you need to keep that, you need to not only, know what you're wanting to get accomplished, but who to go to get the information you need to make it successful.
Definitely well said, Irv. Thank you. So just in the final few slides, wanted to provide our contact information. So if you'd like to reach out, follow up questions or thoughts after today's session, you're more than welcome to do so. We were also fortunate to work with Esri on a user story for this project, which is accessible by this link, or if you just type in Indiana Food Map Esri or something similar on Google, you'll be able to find it. And this kind of puts this presentation and a few other items into a nice little narrative that they put together for us. And so with that, I'd love to take the next 10 or so minutes to answer any questions that you have. So I'll turn it over to Myra to see if there's anything to get us kicked off.
All right. It looks like, thank you, Megan and Irv, for that exciting presentation. I definitely enjoy hearing about these presentations, especially when there's a lot of collaboration involved. And this is so important for food distributions. So it looks like in the chats, if anyone has questions, they can put them in the chats. It looks like Irv had addressed what was in there already. I do see Megan Compton has stated this project was a spectacular example of collaboration, taking a need and creating a solution. It makes what we do matter that much more. Rachel and Megan are great to work with too. Jim Spark says, thanks, Irv and Megan. And he is asking, are you getting any feedback from the people using the app?
Yeah, thanks, Jim, for the question. So initially, we were getting feedback from the food distribution network of just getting thoughts. And then we also, at the onset, were getting inquiries through our constituent services team, just on questions and feedback if we were forgetting certain sites or not including other sites, just trying to sort of clear up some of those questions and continue to improve the data source. As far as user experience, we don't have any mechanism currently to collect that feedback, but we would definitely be open to looking into that in some future iterations of this map or a similar project.
I looked back a little bit in the comments just to read them out loud. Caleb says, thanks for the shout out, Megan. Jim Sparks, again, he says, Megan, welcome to the wonderful world of GIS in Indiana. You are now a member of the best, friendly, knowledgeable, helpful, and fun GIS user community in the country. So welcome, Megan. Very excited. Let's see. Caleb asks, might consider Survey 123 and Experience Builder for the feedback, possibly?
There has been, Megan has sort of followed up. One of the things for future enhancement is trying to make it the map more accessible. And the current accessibility is not really great on the current reiteration. And Esri, Matt Robinson from Esri did suggest that Experience Builder might be a tool to utilize, and we just haven't gotten around to getting into building into that. But as far as the Survey 123, yeah, if I'm not sure if FSSA has a mechanism to get to solicit feedback from folks, but that obviously would be a great tool to utilize for that.
Rachel Lane says that Megan can certainly speak to the number of hits, which was significant. So I'm assuming the website has gotten a lot of hits, the map.
Yeah, there's a slide on that one graph. I think it was what, total about 500,000, just under 500,000.
That's wonderful. Let's see, we've got another question from Ross. What is the process of updating food site information over time? For example, a food pantry changing its hours. Do the food sites contact you regularly?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So as far as that update process goes, let me go to this enhancement slide. So whenever there's a change in hours, we just go into the site specifically. Usually we do have this search feature, so I can easily narrow down the name of the site or the address, so it makes it less daunting to search for, and then we just adjust the field or fields accordingly. As far as the food sites contacting us, we do utilize a lot of social media and websites to get a lot of our information. And since we have partnered with 211 in a lot of this data sharing, they have a very robust accreditation process for their resources as well. So we do go back and forth at times, just contacting each other to make sure things are updated and represented appropriately across the map.
All right, it looks like we have 5 minutes left in this session. If anyone has any more questions, you can type them into the chat, or if we have any closing statements from Megan or Irv. Oh, looks like someone had put a couple of links for Survey 123 feedback from stakeholders within the chat. So. Okay, well, thank you very much, Megan and Irv, for presenting today. And I believe this concludes our session. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you all very much for attending, and have a good day rest of today, and a good day tomorrow morning for the next row of sessions.
Thank you.